Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Jack, why are you going to entertain this? Well, why not? I feel like I can give some nuance into this, and I can diffuse the flame that is being inflamed. And the flame is Mr. James Smith PT, who is bashing our sport, and it cannot happen for much longer. But anyway, I can give my nuance on this situation. Anyway, the second question would be, why are you wearing a raincoat indoors? And to that, I just simply couldn't give you an answer. And the third question would be, why have you got a subpar coffee? And to that one, I couldn't answer that one either. Anyway, let's jump into the Mac, because I'm an online coach and you can't possibly have any other brand of computer except an Apple product. So let's just get straight into it. So the topic of today's video is a post by James Smith. If you don't know who he is a PT, and by the blue tick on his profile, he's obviously a very important person. He has 858,000 followers, which is pretty damn good. But if it's good if you value that in your life. Like, you can still be a dick and have nearly 1 million followers, which James Smith is being. So let's get into the post at hand, and it's the post regarding bodybuilding competitions. Now, this obviously took quite a while to do. So he put up a question box, someone's asked a question, and he's put a really elegant post together, which is thoroughly thought out. I am being sarcastic, it is not very well thought out. Anyway, so basically the question is, what do you think of bodybuilding competitions and the process? And we're gonna go through the caption. So the first bit is something that I can combat. Anything that I will combat, I will. Anything that I won't, I'll leave. But life's too short to be spending it hungry. Number one, we shouldn't necessarily associate hunger with fat loss. I'm 20 weeks deep into this fat loss phase and I don't really feel that hungry. Of course, you're going to feel hungry at some level, but not like, if you're quite experienced with dieting, you know how to, number one, handle hunger, and number two, kind of, like, everyone gets hungry. Like, I'm sure James gets hungry. He's hungry for attention right now, which he's getting a lot of. But understand, I think this post is mainly, it's very generalized, but it's mainly talking to people who are very, very inexperienced with dieting. Because if you are extremely hungry and you're inexperienced with dieting, you just don't know what to do. You just have to handle the hunger, which might lead to binging, kind of eating disorders maybe down the line. But if you're experienced with dieting, I don't necessarily think this is a point. Number two, there is also the point of maybe you are experienced, but you're being coached by a shit PT. There are many shit PTs around and many shit online coaches around that could potentially push you into maybe an eating disorder, but mainly that as well. I think if you're a good enough coach, you'll put a structure in place so you don't necessarily have to associate hunger with weight loss. Now, that's not to say that you are not going to feel hungry, but again, I just don't think we should associate hunger with fat loss. I think that with any sport, you are going to have adversity. Like, we'll go through it later on in this, but basically he talks about being choked out by sweaty blokes. But that's like adversity within that sport, right? Which is obviously like jiu-jitsu or some karate shit. So I understand that potentially like that is the same as potentially being a little bit hungry within prep. So the next part of it was, if you want to battle out your insecurities versus someone else's who's insecure, starve yourself until the point your dick won't work. Now, I can nearly guarantee that most people within prep, your dick works just fine. And also, like, 50% of the population don't have dicks and they're females. So, like, that's that kind of pass out the way. Cover yourself in fake tan. Like, I can't really combat that. However, looking at this tan here by James, I can nearly guarantee it's sunbed related. So kind of like artificial, like UV light. And then call it a sport. Yeah, that bit I can combat because we're calling darts a sport. We're calling snooker a sport. Like, essentially, like, if we're not calling bodybuilding a sport, then what would you how would you characterize it? Is it a lifestyle? Could potentially be. But essentially at the top level, and we're talking about bodybuilding competitions, I would say that it's more a sport than most sports in life. It's a 24/7 kind of process. Like you see football players in an off season, right? And maybe like American football players, and they're all like relaxing, etc., etc. And like bodybuilding is a 24/7 sport. It's like I could do something right now that would impact my session in 2 or 3 days' time, right? It's a 24/7 thing. Even if I go out to a nightclub, which a football player could do, and then potentially play on Saturday, understand that if I went out to a nightclub on the Wednesday, which I don't know if you could do that anymore, unless you've got a passport. Anyway, that's a completely different subject. Then understand it's going to affect my leg session or my push session on Saturday. So it's a 24/7 thing. Like a snooker player could go out every single night and probably perform pretty damn well on the snooker table. Is it a table? Yeah, it must be. Anyway, he then goes on to say, I'm gonna be out here trying to find the world's best almond croissant. I mean, bodybuilders can do that too. I don't really see the point in that. Like essentially an almond croissant would probably be maximum, we're talking like 300 to 400 calories, which you could probably fit into your diet. Like if you're experienced. If you're not experienced, then you're like, well, I can't eat this almond croissant. Or is it a croissant? Anyway, but an experienced dieter would be able to fit it into his macros quite easily. Eating a high protein diet, which is something that bodybuilders actively do anyway. Lifting weights, which is kind of what we do as well. And then like getting sweaty, choking out blokes. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's your thing. But again, like, I'm not going to say too much about that because it's 2021, okay? But if that's your thing, each to their own. He then goes on to say, our idealisms of physique don't have to match up or add up. Sure, I diet here and there and relax here and there, but I'm not giving up 90% of my happiness for 4% shift in body weight. That's a fucking bad deal. See, pushing your body to like the lower end of body, we'll keep it in. That's what James likes. Body, right in his face. But pushing your body fat percentage really, really low is just incredibly fun, in my opinion. So that gives me happiness. And understand when you're giving these kind of general sweep statements, understand that you're speaking to very like general pop, right? That's basically his demographic. But understand the people who do this love it. It's their happiness. It's like going up to a rugby player, and I hate rugby. It's like going up to a rugby player and say, who cares about being tackled, or I don't find happiness in going into a scrum. I don't know. I have no idea about rugby, but I don't find happiness in doing that. But they fucking love it. That is their happiness, right? But I might not see it from my point of view, but understand that that's their happiness. So again, just a little bit of a general sweep statement. And then it says here, most people competing mess up their relationship with their body and food. I would agree with that if you're inexperienced, so you're doing it for the first time, and or if you have a shit coach. I think if you're inexperienced but have a good coach, you won't be. This would be fine, right? I think if you're going into a kind of a fat loss phase for the first time and you are with someone who's giving you a shit meal plan, then I somewhat agree with this statement. And then he says, some don't, but the majority of people are never the same after starving themselves for a new profile picture. Understand that most people don't do things for attention, James. Even though I'm doing a video about this, but most people don't do things for a profile picture. Most do it just to better themselves. And most people who are coming out of a fat loss phase have took something away into other areas of their life. Like pushing your body fat, again, pushing your body fat percentage really, really far down. You tend to learn a lot about yourself, which you can then apply into your business, into personal life, etc., etc. And then he goes on to say, I can deadlift twice my body weight. Is that hard? I'm not sure that is that hard. Run 10k in an hour, in under an hour. I might have to just challenge that in the off season because I don't think that's that hard either. And then it says, life to me is about getting good deals with your time, effort, and energy. Which for me, bodybuilding is. Like for me, I love doing what I do day to day with my time, with my effort, with my energy. Now to James, who might have unsuccessfully carried out a fat loss phase, understand that would be a bad deal because he was maybe inexperienced. And actually, following James for a while. I don't actually follow him anymore, but I know that he did do steroid. He did participate in steroids, but I think I think he just got very impatient. I think he got impatient. I think that potentially he wasn't seeing the results that he wanted to see, so he jabbed, didn't really get anything out of it because maybe he's not genetically blessed, and now he's bashing either the general sport because he didn't get what he wanted out of the sport. It's a bit like me bashing football because I didn't become a professional footballer. And then he goes on to say, but competing in physique to try and boost your self-worth and attempt, I think it's attempt to impress your peers. He put attempt the impress your peers. It's very good English from James here. So I would say that most people who compete in bodybuilding don't do it for other people. I would actually say that most people within bodybuilding are incredibly selfish. So yeah, I don't think people were trying to do it with other people at all. I would have to disagree with that. And then he said, I personally talked hundreds of people out of competing and I admire the 1 or 2% who dominate their space. Now, this is a thing that I can agree with. Now, if you're preaching the all or nothing mentality that is everything all encompassing, etc., you are likely going to be ending up with nothing. Understand if you have a flexible approach and you're being coached by the process by a decent coach. Understand like 10 out of 10 times you're probably going to get to where you want to go to. Understand when you're preaching the all or nothing mentality, which is typically people who are at the very, very top of preaching, you have to do everything, every little variable kind of known to man, and then they step on stage and do very, very well. Understand that the people who are doing this for the first time will look at the people at the top because they're doing very, very well and try and replicate that. But they're not there yet. So guess what they do? They fall off. If they were a little bit more flexible or were taught to be a little bit more flexible, this wouldn't be a conversation. So actually, I kind of agree that 1 or 2% dominate this space because there's such a big kind of drop-off rate. But there is such a big drop-off rate because people just look to the very, very top. Now we're going to the next part where it basically says, but the other 98% are just a few months away from a brand new eating disorder, which I actually somewhat agree with here. Again, because of the point I made just now. And then it goes on to say, let's not forget that the fitness industry, in air quotes, or actually not air quotes, just quotes, contains a lot of eating disorders hidden behind a six-packs and fake smile. Again, I can somewhat agree with that, but understand with experience that you know that you cannot kind of sustain a six-pack kind of year round. So it's a very general statement. And then he basically goes on to say, shots fired, suck out competing. Now there's a difference between shots fired and just a general assumption about sport. So there's definitely that aspect of it. Now, I looked at some of the kind of comments on here as well, and this is where I'm gonna basically kind of back James a little bit here. Now understand that yes, he's made quite frankly, a shit post. It's just a shit post. But if you're following James, you know that he will basically try and get you to nibble. And lots of people have nibbled, especially if you're going for a complete sport. If he went for football, rugby, NFL, NBA, whatever, you're going to get the same response. You're basically punching people in the face. Also understand that if you're getting like comments on how you look and you're getting maybe potentially like, because it happens, it's 2021, he's gonna get really fucking shitty DMs. And it's gonna be from people who he's basically punched in the face and they wanna punch him right back. But understand these DMs, because he's very kind of active on social media and he maybe potentially shows a lot of his life, understand that these comments on social media are gonna be very, 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 what would be the word? To the bone. They know everything about his life, so they're going to pick out something very, very close to home. So in that regard, yes, he's going for a nibble, but understand he's human. He's still a human being. Please treat him like one. He's probably made a fucking stupid mistake here. But understand, he's doing it for attention. There's just no need to push your energy that way. Understand that if you're giving that so much attention, it's only going to push traffic his way. So in my opinion, even though I've just made a video about it, I would actually just ignore comments like that. Ignore general sweeping statements. Ignore the social media cock swabbling. And just remember that people who are very, very unsuccessful in what they did will always bash other people who are doing it very, very well. So anyway, quite generally, just don't give it energy. Yeah, that's pretty much about it. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. I would say he's very clever, but I don't think it's that at all. I think he's actually quite the opposite. But don't send him shitty DMs. Avoid that. And let's get on with our life. Quite simply. Anyway. Fuck, my coffee's cold.